Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you today about stimulus. And so you guys on the exam are going to get a lot of stimulus questions. I think they're easier, but it depends on your perspective. They can be difficult. Really, what it comes down to is being able to recognize some of the common things they're going to be asking you to do with the stimulus that they give you, and the ways in which they will ask you to pair your content knowledge with your ability to kind of logic and reason with the stimulus that they give you. So I wanted to give you some examples. This is something that I've done with my spring students, and so I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to kind of think through these as well. We'll skip a few. I'll try and keep this to be somewhere around 25 minutes long or so. Honestly, I'm going to try to do it in 15 minutes. I don't know if that's possible, but we'll see. I'll skip a few. And of course, you can always pause the presentation, slow it down, take a look at what I'm showing you here, and attempt to actually answer some of the questions I'm asking in real time just by pausing it. Okay, so I encourage you to do that. In fact, all right. Without further ado, let's look here. This is a very common map, or a version of this map shows up. It says the role of agriculture in the world economy, and it says agriculture is a share of total GDP by percent. Okay, so you look at the key there, you see the darker the color, the more agriculture makes up a country's GDP. First question I would ask is, does this mean that these countries produce a lot of food? The answer is no, it does not. If you take a look at these countries, many of them are in sub-Saharan Africa, they're not going to have very high agricultural outputs. So make sure you can recognize that. What is this showing then? Well, it's showing what percent of a country's economy is made up of their agricultural output, not the totality of their agricultural output. So, in other words, a country, like say Ethiopia or Egypt, could have very, very low total output, but still, because their economy is just not very large, that agricultural output could be a very large percentage of what they do there. Okay. So that's maybe our first lesson here. Don't always just think that it's as obvious as it may initially seem what's being depicted on a map. Okay. Also, we can maybe take this analysis a bit further and say, well, what's going on in these countries is that they are less developed. Therefore, they're going to have a large percentage of their economy made up of, if you recall, primary sector employment, meaning extractive industries. So a lot of mining, fishing would count, drilling for oil. You see a lot of that in Nigeria, and farming, small scale, typically slash and burn farming. Yeah, good map there. Be familiar with that. I like this map a lot too. It shows growing city populations across the world, and it projects into the future as well. Looking at this map, you can see that in the past there were probably three kind of regional population concentrations in the world: Western Europe, the Eastern United States, and East Asia, centered really on Japan. As you move through in time, you start to see that these regions haven't grown that much outside of Japan. Right? Japan's still growing rapidly. You can see that through 1990 it is booming. Okay, these other countries or these other regions, they're not growing as much. You'll note some growth here in South America, portions of South Asia as well. When you start looking for the light blue color, though, indicating basically current growth rates, or current population rates, I should say, you note that Asia is lit up. South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia to a degree as well are growing rapidly. Then you look for this light green color. It's kind of hard to see, but you see a lot of that in Africa, right? Especially Western Africa. So, this map's a great map to look at for many very important population trends that you need to be familiar with. It's also a great map to help you remember that the way they're going to ask you about patterns, right? They're going to rarely expect you to know particular things about where populations are located. Now, they may want you to know that South and East Asia are where most of the world's population is concentrated. But that's less likely than asking you to talk about what we just talked about, right? Clusters of population, trends over time, and they'll typically show you those trends on a piece of stimulus. This is a cool map here. It's heart disease death rates, excuse me, adults age 35 plus by county. They could ask a really tricky question about this map. They could say, what is the scale of analysis on this map? Your initial instinct might be national because it shows national data across the entire United States. That would be wrong. Your next instinct might be to say statewide because obviously it does show statewide data, or at least data across the state, but that would be wrong too. The answer, the scale of analysis, would actually be county level because the smallest discernible unit of measurement is the county. Right, so this is showing us every county in the United States is heart disease death rate. Okay. They may get a little more particular. They may ask you to talk about, well, why are certain areas surrounded by, bad heart disease rates, but there's these little islands of healthy areas. Well, these are probably larger urban areas or suburban areas that are more affluent than the rural areas that surround them. These are people who have better diets, who maybe know a little more about how to eat. Maybe they're more educated in general. That typically leads to better health outcomes. And of course, if you know anything about the eastern United States, this is true. And also, here's Cobb County. And you see North Metro Atlanta here. I mean, that's we understand that in the suburbs of Atlanta, we are going to have better health outcomes sadly, than many of our neighbors to the extreme north in the tri-state area where I'm from. Okay. Let's keep moving. This is really maybe not so much a useful map for analysis, but more a useful map for recalling various development theories. Okay. If you remember, there's this concept that you need to be very familiar with of the core and the periphery, and of course the semi-periphery in the middle. This is Wallerstein's world systems theory. Remember, he thinks the core countries exploit the cheap resources and cheap labor from the peripheral countries. They take the raw materials from, say, a continent like Africa, they produce them, they turn them into something else, and they sell them at a huge profit. An example might be, say, lithium mining. Okay, you see a lot of lithium mining in Africa, a lot in Chile here. What happens with that lithium is it's purchased cheaply. It's sold to multinational companies from Western Europe and the United States, and China too, and turned into often cell phone or car batteries, and then sold at an incredible profit. That would be Wallerstein. He would say this is showing this world system of economic exploitation in his mind. And remember, he's a Marxist, so he thinks that you can explain the world through economic relationships, and that those relationships will always be exploitive. Now let's contrast this with Rostow. If you guys remember Rostow, he says, no, that's not the way the world works. Places that are less developed just haven't done the proper things yet. They haven't moved through the proper steps in order to achieve development. According to Rostow, if you do those things, you will develop. Okay. And again, guys, I want to point out, this is very much overview. Okay, if what I'm saying is not sounding very familiar, you need to get back in that AMSCO book or get in your notes and really, really start reading, highlighting, and making notes. Okay, this is basic stuff, just overview. Okay, that's a cool map there, but not great for overview. Same thing here. I like this one. This is a flow chart or a flow line map. You see, obviously, this is London. And you see that the green is people flowing into London, and the red is people flowing out of London. Again, the thickness of the line indicates how many people are moving in or moving out. Okay? There's also clearly a pattern here. Right? The pattern is people are moving in from the north, and when they leave London, they move to the south. This is going to be mostly young people looking for work in the northern, less developed regions of England, moving down into London to find work. The red is going to be mostly older people leaving London because it's too expensive, it's too crowded, and they want to get away from that. Okay. Again, a very useful map. You'll see things like this showing migration rates, and they may ask you to just simply note what's going on. They may pair it with a map and ask you to explain, okay, there are a lot, in 2015, there are a lot of immigrants fleeing Syria. I shouldn't say immigrants, they're refugees fleeing Syria. They cross into Turkey. You'll see that maybe on a map. And then you might be asked to explain, why are these refugees, why are they choosing Greece? Well, it's proximity. It's close. It's much closer than Spain, and also closer than Italy as well. Okay. I like this map that shows Stockholm, Sweden. It's a life goal of mine to get there and see this place. One of the things that makes it so unique is that it's built on all these little islands. Okay. This is a strange place to build a city, right? I mean, it's going to be very costly to maintain Stockholm. Imagine all the bridges that you have to build and all the water that wants to just, cover the city. You have to keep it out using levees and all sorts of other technologies. So why did they build Sweden? Why did they build Stockholm here? Well, it's because in the past, having navigable riverways primarily was the key to you trading and surviving. Now, of course, today, rivers are still obviously very important, but not like they used to be, right? Today, having good road access, a good airport, good air access, and good ports nearby is much more important. Rail shipping is, still important, but again, much less so today than air or ocean or road shipping, okay? Also, again, think about this when you think about cities. This is called the site, right? This particular location of Stockholm is called its site. So if you were describing the site of Stockholm, you could say it's on the Saltsjön, what is that, lake? I don't know what that is, to be honest with you, or the Mälaren Lake. If you were trying to describe the situation of Stockholm, you could describe all the things around it, the airports nearby, the other countries nearby, the cities around it. Okay, that would describe its situation. If you described its interstate connectivity, that would describe the situation of Stockholm as well. This is a classic map. We see maps like this all the time on the exam. They are showing time, space, or space-time compression. In 1800, it was very difficult to get out of New York City. It took a whole day, right? As time goes on, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter, or I should say longer and longer in terms of your travel. You can go further than ever before in a day. Why is that? Well, that's because technology is improving. Transportation technology is improving in particular, right? Eventually, you begin to get rail, cars, really, really high-speed rail, air travel, jet air travel. And today, we have the internet, right? So we physically don't have to travel to these places. We can use Zoom to connect in seconds with somebody across the country. Not even seconds, actually. So that's time-space compression. The biggest contributor to that for us is, of course, the internet. And social media is facilitating that ease of connection that we've never had before. Okay, let me show you a couple more here in the time we have remaining. We're making good time. These are images from the Korean government, the South Korean government. In the 1980s, became concerned with overpopulation. They thought they were growing too fast and that they would reach their carrying capacity. And Malthus's worst nightmare would come true. So they started putting out ads like this that say, have 2 kids and don't have too many. And then you got this little image here, because if you do, your house will be too crowded. Well, I don't know if you guys remember, but Korea has the opposite problem now. Right? They are not growing fast enough. So posters like this you won't see anymore. Today they will be encouraging families to have more children and trying to come up with ways to encourage families to have more kids. Things like tax breaks if you'll have more children. Subsidized daycare costs, meaning the government helps you pay for daycare. Okay, that's common in South Korea today. Remember our vocab about this concept. It's pro-natalist or anti-natalist. Pro-natalist policies encourage more births. Anti-natalist policies, like China's one-child policy, encourage fewer births. Last thing we have to look at here is this really cool map of Europe. It shows that the most common second language in Europe is English, and this shows English is a global lingua franca. It's a language that people who speak other languages use to communicate with each other. So guys, when a French and a German person meet, they don't attempt to speak French or German to each other. They often just use English because they both speak it as a second language. Okay, I'm almost up on time. Thank you. I hope that helped. I'll be sending out another video too, so be sure to check that out. Good luck Tuesday, guys. I'm pulling for you.